Okay, so prospective students, my name is Jeb Allen, and I'm here with President of Amherst College, Michael Elliott. We were talking with the administration on how Amherst College could be more presentable to students who might not know what Amherst College is. I'm from Jacksonville, Florida. Personally, no offense, I had no clue what Amherst College was until I got here.
Of course not.
I actually went to Williams College the day before I got here, and I'm here. So you can assume how the tour went.
You made the right decision.
Yeah, I would agree. But anyways, so this is just for prospective students who might not yet know what Amherst College is, or might not have gone to an elite high school where they channel students in, and this is just an opportunity. We're gonna have a few people on throughout the rest of the semester. This week is President Elliott. Next week is Dean Angie, and then we're gonna have Dean Angie as the head of students, and we're just gonna have some professors on, so you guys can get an inside look of what Amherst College is like and know where we would love for you to come. So, President Elliott,
It's great to be
glad to
here.
have you.
You should tell everybody where we are.
Yeah, so right now we are in the WHAM studio. WHAM is our on-college radio production studio, and we love the graffiti. There's some big names here. So actually, we have Kendrick Lamar. I don't know how on earth we got Kendrick Lamar to Amherst College, but he signed the wall. We have Cardi B on the wall, and then we have all the students who have been through here and signed their names and written their graffiti. But it's a very cool place, and that's where we'll be filming. At least for the first 2 weeks, and then we might move around. But if you don't mind, I'd like to get into some questions for you. Absolutely.
The floor is yours.
So one of the reasons that President Elliott here is you're actually a student at Amherst
That's right.
College. So why did you choose Amherst College? What was your first impression? What did you think at first compared to your 4 years?
Sure.
I'd love to know.
So I came here as a student in 1988, and like you came from a long way away. I came from Tucson, Arizona. I had also never been to not only Amherst, but a college like Amherst before. And I was attracted to a couple of things. I think some of the same things that bring students here all the time. One is I loved the idea of a place that really valued ideas, where I could have close relationships with faculty. I thought a place that was big enough that I could try out different things, but small enough that I knew I would have the kind of support and connections that I thought I would need to be successful. And like many people, I applied from a distance. I never visited. In fact, I had never even been to the state of Massachusetts before April of 1988 when I came for an admitted students day. Yeah. And, I just fell in love with the campus. I loved hearing from the students, from the faculty. One of the things I really also appreciated, because I was coming from so far away and I knew I would not be bringing a car, is that I could see that this was a place where I could get around, not only on campus, but into the town and even over to Northampton, by walking, by using public transportation, and just felt like a place that could be comfortable for me. And, it was the best decision I've made in my life. It introduced me to people I still hold dear. It introduced me to my calling. It transformed me as a person. I can't imagine who I would be without those 4 years at Amherst College.
Yeah, no. And just to touch up, huge perk of going to Amherst College, you don't have to spend money on gasoline.
Absolutely.
It's a lifesaver, I promise you. So I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, and it's actually, I think, the biggest land city in the continental U.S. So there's one in Alaska that's bigger, but Jacksonville's a huge,
big sprawling city.
Huge city. And you have to drive everywhere.
Right.
High school, 30 minutes. Beach, 45. It's so big. And it is really nice not having to spend money on gasoline. You can walk into town, grab a bite with friends, use the public transportation.
Yeah.
That is a huge perk of Amherst College. But so what were your initial thoughts when coming to Amherst? Because a lot of people say when they first get here compared to the rest of their time, it's completely different. What would you say?
Like most people, when I got here, I was both kind of thrilled and overwhelmed at the same time. Again, coming from far away, I would say at that point we probably had more students who were from New England as a percentage. But everybody's from someplace different, different points of reference. I immediately realized I was no longer the smartest kid in the room, and I never have been since. And it was both uncomfortable and exciting at the same time. I went through the same experience I know a lot of people go through during their first, say, 6 weeks to 2 months of college, which is that's such a temporally dense time. You're meeting so many people,
Yeah.
you're learning about yourself, you're trying to figure out your rhythms of life, you're signing up for clubs, you're dropping the clubs you've signed up for because you've signed up for too many. You can't believe virtually every first-year student I've ever talked to at Amherst, those first 2 months, they can't believe it's less than 2 years. It just feels that way. And I went through all of that. I fell in love with my classes. I had great professors from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I was also really lucky in the friends that I made and the people I lived with in my first year residence hall.
What dorm were you in?
I was in what's now called Mo Pratt.
Wow.
But
Okay.
at the time was just called Pratt because the other Pratt dorm was not a dormitory at that point.
Really? In 1988?
Right.
So it's relatively new.
Right. It's relatively new as a residence hall.
Okay.
The building you're thinking of is called Charles Pratt. It's on the main quad. It's one of the most beautiful residence halls we have. When I was here, that was the Natural History Museum and some classrooms. And it has like a pretty long and storied history. At some point the pool is actually in that building. But when I was here, the living configuration was different. Not every first-year student lived on the quad. And Mo Pratt was both first-year students and some sophomores.
Yeah. So just to kind of clarify, so when you come to Amherst College, if you do, when you do, we would love to have you. But every single student lives on what we call the first-year quad. So it's a big, open, grassy area with trees and stuff, but every single residential hall for every single first year is all next to each other. So it's really cool because you come into a huge college, you don't know who, you don't know who your friends are or whatever, and every single first year is a 3-minute walk away.
It puts you
So
right in the
cool.
middle of campus. It puts
Yeah.
you all next to each other.
Yeah.
I think that was a great innovation the college made at some point.
So smart. Let's go on to our next question. So, what is, as a student, or within your current role, what was your funniest or most memorable moment as a student? Is there any, you're sitting down and you remember, somebody shooting chocolate milk out of their nose? Was there any moment you remember or something that happened on campus at the time?
Yeah.
You came here, you said you came here in 87,
88.
Good Lord, during the Reagan administration?
Yeah.
That is insane.
So I will say a current event that I definitely remember, speaking of that, I remember walking through the dining hall and somebody shouting out, "The Berlin Wall just fell," which is something that, and I was very interested in history and politics. I never had imagined it's going to happen in my
That's
lifetime.
insane.
So that's one of my memories. But
Wow.
some of my memories maybe not best recorded on tape and distributed. The funny ones. But I'll tell you a story that I was thinking about for some reason just the other day. I did meet tremendous group of friends. I don't know how I got so lucky to have the friends that I made here, and they're the people that I'm still most comfortable with in my life, and we still see each other. They think it's hilarious that I'm back here as president and would like to demand a recount on the vote. But we, during my junior year, one of my friends, my rooming group, went abroad, and we, to fill the room that was left open, a exchange student from Russia came. And this is probably 1990, 1991. Coming from Russia was a very different thing.
Yeah.
At that moment, right?
Yeah.
This was somebody who,
Especially for
had never traveled abroad before. This is before the internet. Mass media was not working in the same way. So you could, and we also didn't have the same kind of international student community that we have now on campus. Many fewer international students. So he came, and this was, a big stretch for him in terms of experience. And I was thinking for some reason just the other day about how we took him after he came to the Hampshire Mall, which at that point was more of a kind of classic, late 80s shopping mall, and introduced him to American consumerism.
Oh, yes, American consumerism.
And all of its pleasures and foibles. And he thought it was both wonderful and also ridiculous at the same time. Why do I need 25 different choices for a T-shirt? And I want one of those T-shirts. And yeah, he was a really tall guy. Is still a really tall guy. Andre, I know you're out there somewhere. And he bought these really just garish high top sneakers that were like teal and purple, and he thought they were spectacular. And it was just this fantastic moment where we got to know somebody and welcome them into our group and outfit him in a certain way. And
That's great.
it was a little slice of what Amherst was like for me.
That's great. That's really funny. And yeah, so to once again kind of clarify, Amherst has a huge international community. Do you know what percent it is?
So we're about 10 to 12%.
10 to 12%.
It depends who you want to count as international. Some of those are students who were born abroad and did some school in the United States. We have some American citizens who come from abroad, but somewhere around that. 10% is a pretty rough figure.
Yeah, I mean, and for a college, it's roughly 2,000. That's
right. And I think one of the things that's really
it's a lot.
distinctive about Amherst that's not true every place is because we extend our financial aid package to international students as well as domestic students, we're able to get to international students from the entire globe.
Yeah.
They're not just coming from a few countries.
No,
They're
it's all
from
over.
Africa, from the Middle East, from Europe, from Asia, from South Asia,
Eastern Europe, everywhere.
Eastern Europe, Latin America, and it really does, I think, enrich the experience.
It's so cool. It really is, because, I mean, as much as there is, and America's a huge country, and there is such a cultural difference between Jacksonville, Florida, and Amherst, Massachusetts. It's night and day. But when you're comparing it to somebody from Beijing, China, it's just that much more interesting. I was lucky enough to go to a high school that had some international students as well. So that was one of the big reasons I was actually interested in Amherst, and I think it adds a whole new dimension to the college experience, which I really
agree.
enjoy.
I agree. It's a special thing.
It really is. So what inspired you to return to Amherst? I mean, obviously you didn't do it immediately. I'm not actually sure. What did you do in between when you graduated, and what brought you back to Amherst College?
So I eventually became an English professor. Right, I fell in love with literature here, and the study of literature, and the teaching of literature. And I was inspired by my Amherst professors to want to do something like what they were doing. I eventually got a PhD at Columbia, and then I was very fortunate. I landed a teaching professorship, a position at Emory University in Atlanta. And I was there for over 20 years, 24 years to be exact. I started as a professor and then gradually moved into administration. I worked in academic affairs, eventually became dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. And Emory was terrific for me. It's also a great place to go to school. I loved Atlanta. And at the same time, for me, the kind of education that we provide here at Amherst is always been the gold standard.
Yeah.
It's always been the kind of bar that I think every institution should aspire to, something that really values free inquiry, curiosity, close relationships between faculty and students. And, I hope I brought that ethos into the work that I did, both inside and outside the classroom at Emory. And I was, I had a great position there, and I really thought that I'd probably finish my career there. And then this opportunity came along, and I thought, well, if I'm going to do something else, it would be great to be at a small college. And if I'm going to do something else at a small college, it would be wild if I could actually do it at Amherst. And so, I put my name forward, and nobody was more surprised than I was to get the call. And it is something special to do something like this, where, in the very places that you knew over 30 years ago. I hope it makes me a better president, but it certainly is fun for me.
Yeah. How would you say the campus has changed since you were here, obviously, in the 80s compared to now?
Right. So there are certainly physical changes you can point to. Probably the biggest one is, and I say this especially for students who haven't visited, we have now this really state-of-the-art science center that is spectacular and is like no other facility that I know of that's dedicated only to the teaching and research of undergraduates and faculty.
Yeah.
I've seen similar quality facilities, but they are always, for faculty and graduate students.
Yeah.
So that is a big change in the campus, in the energy of campus, and then the dormitories that are around there, what we call the greenways, are all new. So that
Very
whole
nice.
area of campus feels very different. The other thing I would really stress is that actually most of what I think is different about Amherst of 2025 versus Amherst of 1990 is not about Amherst College per se, but about some of the things that are very different about being a college student. You're looking at a device, right now where you can access the entire world.
So cool.
And that was not part of anything that we carried around. And we communicated with each other very differently. So if you think about what a college community is, we're all, it's sutured and connected through different forms of communication. I was here not only before smartphones, not only before cell phones, but really before the internet. We had a very
Oh my God.
primitive version
Good
of
Lord.
email on campus. Nobody used it. I never sent an email to any faculty member during my 4 years at Amherst. If you wanted to speak to somebody, you had to get on the phone.
So crazy.
So that changes everything about the educational and the social dynamic of campus.
Yeah. I still know some professors who are like, please come talk to me in person. I hate email because they're not used to it and they don't like it. But I've always said, I think maybe I'm a little bit hypocritical because I catch myself doing it all the time. I send way too many, social media videos to my friends. I spend too much time on social media. But I do think at Amherst, there is like sort of an emphasis on getting off of your phones. Like I know one of my friends and I actually, we tried like an experiment because we were like, it was after the election actually. After the election, I was obviously, like I'm very political, was very interested in the election outcome. And I found myself after the election, I was like, I feel like horrible. Like I remember I think it was the day after Trump won the election, I had like 8 hours of screen time or like 9 hours of screen time. And I was like, this is toxic. Yeah. This is terrible. So one of my friends and I, we drove to Target and we bought flip phones. And we did that for like a month. We did like a month detox. Yeah. It was very fun. It was, kind of a fun thing, show somebody your flip phone. It was funny. It was kind of cool, but it was very nice to go to Val and sit down. And it's like it's crazy. You'd see yourself pulling out your phone 10 times in the conversation and you pull it out and you're like, what is there to pull out? There's no Instagram to surf. There's no Snapchat to respond to somebody. Like it was very relaxing to not have to constantly deal with notifications. And I texted everybody, who was of real importance, and I thought and I would check my phone regularly. Like it's not like I wasn't going on at all. It was just I had 15 minutes of screen time a day because it was just turned off in my room. But I do think at Amherst there is kind of an emphasis on going outside. Well, when we go eat, it's phones down. Let's have a conversation.
We are a place that really prizes face-to-face interaction. And I'll say for whatever the changes that have occurred at Amherst, and I would say if you even go back further, and I get to talk to a lot of alumni in my role, I would say the through line of Amherst is that we understand that education happens in small groups. When you get to know each other, when you get to know each other in a real way. And that requires deep interaction. Yeah. We don't do any classes online. We bring people together in a single dining facility every day, multiple times a day. And that's all part of the ethos of who we are. And personally, I think that is the most powerful form of education possible. And not just in the classroom, in the academic way, although that's essential, but the kind of learning that you do about who you are and who you want to be outside of the classroom.
Yeah. No, that's so true. And one thing I'd like to talk about is there is a program here called Take Your Professor Out. It's called Typo. One of the best ideas anybody's ever come up with, especially at this college. It's such a good idea. Where it's the college funds it, where once a semester you have the opportunity to take your professor out to eat anywhere. I mean, I'm sure you can't go to like Rooster Chris Steakhouse in New York, but like in town, you ask your professor out. Usually, it's a group of students. I went with Lawrence Douglas in the LJST department, who I'd love to actually have on here. I have to reach out to him and see if he's open to it. He's not here this semester. He's taking a little bit of a break. But no, I definitely agree with you. And it is, you know, academia is a special place, you know, especially if it's done right. And education needs to go beyond what's in the classroom. And I do agree with you. You learn so much more, and your worldview really is changed, and you become more of an open-minded person if you know who the person is that you're in the classroom talking with. And one of the things especially I enjoy about Amherst is I'm a political science major, and all of the classes are very small. I would say most of my classes are under 15 students, and that it changes your education you get. When you know the student's dog, you know their, like, you know you've met their parents, will you help them move into their room? Like, if you're at Amherst College for longer than I'd say like a year and a half, you're not going to walk anywhere on campus without running into somebody, which is crazy. It's crazy.
It's one of the ways I put it is that you can't hide at Amherst. And,
no.
You know, and that's, I would say, as you're thinking about Amherst, there are people for whom that's not the environment they want. If you want to be at a school where you can kind of hide and you can kind of melt into the crowd a little bit, probably Amherst isn't actually the right place for you, and it's not for everybody. Mm-hmm. But you know, I do think it enables you, it forces you into conversations that you might not have in any other way. Yeah. And sometimes, you know, you have conversations that are uncomfortable,
which is good.
It's important, you know. The process of learning is not an easy one. It's not supposed to be an easy one. It should be joyful, but there should be some difficulty to it. Yeah. And you know, one of the great things I get to see at Amherst is not just the way that students are supported by their faculty and staff, although I do think the faculty and staff are incredibly dedicated to students, but the way that students support each other. Yeah. And that's really something that I'm proud to be a part of.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to the next question. So what are some new, and I know him personally, but I'd like you to kind of talk about it. What are some new and exciting developments on campus prospective students should be looking out for? I definitely want you to talk about the new students.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. The obvious place to go is we are constructing a new student center and dining commons, which will be a single building. It is something we're very excited about. It will open in fall of 26. So if you come in this fall, you will get to see the last class that eats in Val, and part of the first class that gets to eat in the new dining hall. We are a campus where we have a single dining hall. That's part of our ethos. That's not about to change. Mm-hmm. This will not just be a place that, you know, I think will improve the dining experience, but it will be a place that's designed to have more things about, you know, spaces for students to gather, both in purposeful and kind of serendipitous ways, and we think help form even greater sense of community and allow students to kind of be in conversation with each other in new ways. So, for instance, this radio station where we're saying this will close here. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to figure out what to do about the graffiti.
I've already talked to Dee and Angie about it. Yeah. I told her, and I'm looking at them. I have already told her the new WHAM studio needs to have white walls. Non-negotiable. Dee and Angie, I'm looking at you. It better have white walls. That is non-negotiable.
All right. So you've got new clean walls to graffiti on.
Yes.
The radio station will move. Most of the things in this student center will move. It'll have game rooms. It's also a building that's really designed. It's on a hillside with, you know, kind of really nice views of the. So it'll open up to the outdoors. So that's going to be transformative for the campus. So exciting. And it's going to be fun in the next year as we get ready for that. That's the main thing that we're focused on in terms of big developments. You know, there are other things that we're going to be working on. You know, I'm really interested in how we make sure that we're a place where people learn the art of disagreeing with one another in a civil way, and on something you care deeply about. And we're going to be working on that, I think, in the next year. But really, it's that student center that's the big next development for us as a campus.
Yeah, and then I also would like you to kind of touch up on the housing, because the housing is shaking up a lot right now,
well,
especially and the pod housing.
Right.
Too.
So a couple of things have changed. One is that there is an apartment building that is just a little bit more in town than anything we currently have that is being built, and we are going to rent out the entire building and use it as a residence hall. Yeah. So it'll open up a new housing option. This will not be for first-year students.
Yeah.
But give us a different option, a different footprint in town, which also allows us to make some other moves on campus. So that's really exciting. And then we've made some changes to the housing process that we think will make it easier if you want to continue to live around your friends throughout the 4 years. So we're going to watch those things and see how they work. So there is a focus on making sure that the residential experience is supportive of all the work that we do on the educational side.
Yeah, and just to explain for students, so how the housing works is over 4 years. Well, depending on each year, you're going to get given a number. So let's just say for mathematical purposes, there are 2,000 students here. I know it's a little bit less.
Right.
So there'll be blocks of 500, and you're randomly assigned a number. So obviously the first years are all going to be on the first year quad. I don't see that changing.
No.
Yeah, I don't see that changing. I think that's great. And then for the sophomores, juniors, seniors, obviously like the seniors are gonna get the best housing. Juniors second best, sophomores third best. And what I will say is I know it's changing. What's regarded as the worst dorm at Amherst College is Cohen. I don't know if you know that or not, but that's what's seen
I've heard
by students. But I live in it.
Right.
And I would actually push back. I don't think it's that
Okay.
bad. Cohen gets too much hate. And
Okay.
that's a hot take at Amherst. But what it is the rooms are a little bit smaller, but they're all turning back into singles now.
Right.
Which
Which
is
is originally how it was designed.
Yes, they were all designed as singles, and they turned them into doubles, so it's a little bit small right now. But I live with a ton of my friends. The floor you get very close with everybody because you're all around each other. But they are getting turned into singles, so I actually think it's going to be a very desirable dorm on campus once they're singles.
I suspect it will be as well. I mean, it
think
was
so.
a very desirable dorm when it was first built. When
Yeah.
I was here as a student, I came not long after it was constructed.
Yeah,
In fact, when I was here, it was first called New Dorm.
a new dorm. Okay.
And then was Kristen Cohen dorm. The Cohen family was very supportive of Amherst. And I am really pleased about that. I'll also share, since we're talking about my experience here.
Okay, let's hear
I
it.
had terrible room draw numbers. Pretty much every year. Definitely sophomore and junior year. I think sophomore year, we were like 7th from the bottom or something like that. So, and it worked out just fine.
I think I could actually best you. I think there were only 5 or 6 rooms open by the time I picked in Cohen. And I was like, good Lord, but my room and I picked it, and we love it. I actually think I'm going to go to Cohen again next year and hopefully get a single.
Okay.
Because I like Cohen. It's a very good position on campus,
All
right across from Val. I'm in Val a lot. It's good.
Okay.
But I guess, students might not even get to experience Val, who might be watching this. So
If you're coming in the fall, you will.
Yeah,
If you're coming
okay.
if you're coming in the fall after, you won't.
it's so crazy.
Yeah, it's a big
wild.
change. Val has been the
Yeah.
dining hall for every single living Amherst alum.
What?
Because it's been, it's 81, 82 years old, 83 years old.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Were there a lot of alumni who maybe reached out to you mad that Val was getting torn down? Or
No.
They're ready.
I think people know it's a building whose time has come, but there's a lot of nostalgia, understandably so.
Yeah.
And I'm sure students will do it. I think we're gonna have a lot of fun last meals in Val.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Let's go to the next question. So what do you think Amherst does best? And then I have a follow-up question, which we can talk about after, is what do we need to improve on as a campus? But let's talk about what Amherst does best first.
I mean, I've alluded a little bit to it first. What Amherst does best is it pushes people to learn about themselves and about academic subjects. There and the academic experience is really the core of that. There's actual research that people do on outcomes of college experiences. What's most likely to make you successful in college? What's most likely to make you realize, in 10 years after you graduate, the college was a transformative experience for me. And it really comes down to, do you form close connections with faculty? And there are different ways you can do that. You can do that in a seminar. You can do that by working with faculty on a research project. You can do that by, sometimes traveling as a class. Those are all things that are the core of the Amherst experience, the small classroom experience, the intimacy of working closely with faculty who are dedicated to you, and their entire mission is focused on instructing undergraduate students, and who are there to challenge you and get you to live up to and extend your potential as a thinker, regardless of the subject.
Yeah.
I think that is something Amherst does extraordinarily well. I would put the quality of the Amherst education up against any institution in this country, and I feel entirely confident about that.
Yeah.
And I think what Amherst does well is when students can have those same kinds of close relationships outside the classroom.
Yeah.
And I think Amherst offers opportunities for people to form that. And that's the core. That's the core of the experience.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be especially valuable in helping students navigate what I think is likely to be a very uncertain time in the economy as the knowledge economy starts to shift.
Yeah.
Thanks to the growth of artificial intelligence. Maybe we can talk about that too. Well, the follow-up is what can Amherst do better?
Yeah.
So, I alluded to one thing before. Everybody in the world right now, I think, is thinking about this question of how we help people learn how to disagree with one another.
Yeah,
sometimes the
Yeah.
kind of intimacy of Amherst can actually make that harder because you know people so well.
Yeah.
And it can be hard to say Jeb, I like you, but I think you're deeply wrong, and here's why. And we need to work on that.
For sure.
But I think
100%.
the other thing is, I would like Amherst students to take greater pleasure in their intellectual lives here. I think instead they often there are too many students who sometimes are so anxious about getting the right grade, getting the right credential, getting the right internship or job afterwards. And I understand all of those things. I think we have great resources to support you in them. But this is an opportunity to grow in a particular kind of way, to embrace difficulty, to be curious, to take some risks.
Yep.
And to understand that as hard as all that is, and it is, again, hard, there can be a real kind of joy to it.
Yeah.
And that's more of an ethos than anything else. But it's something that I'm trying to think about. How do we move the culture a little bit in that direction?
Yeah. No, yeah, that's important. And one thing that Amherst does that I think helps students take the risk is we do offer 4 pass-fails. So there are 4 classes at Amherst. You can use one a semester. So you can use them your freshman fall, freshman spring, sophomore fall, sophomore spring, or you can space them out. I think a lot of students kind of use them at the end because they use them in classes that they wouldn't do. Like one thing I really want to do is I want to take a logic class. I think that would be super interesting, but I'm not confident I'd get a good grade. So for example, if I want to take this logic class, I could use a pass-fail, which is super cool because you're in the class, you're working, but if you aren't confident, a lot of students go immediately to graduate school here, or it's very competitive. A lot of students go to Wall Street, and the GPA matters a lot. So for students who are concerned that I really want to take this class, but if it hurts my GPA, if I get a a B, which at Amherst College, that's taboo. A B, that's the worst thing ever.
I'd like it to be a little
But-
less taboo, but that's maybe another.
I know, and
conversation.
you know who is very big about that is Austin Serrett,
Of course.
who I've talked about, and hopefully he'll get on the show too. Very interesting professor, one of the most unique professors I've ever had in my life. I enjoy it, and he's also, I think he's very passionate about getting Amherst to disagree more, but respectfully at the same time.
Yeah.
In his class, he pushes you to do that because, I mean, he is. It doesn't matter what you think. He's gonna make you question yourself,
Absolutely.
no matter what you say. I mean, obviously, there's a political nature to the class. He's a political science professor, but it doesn't matter if what you say is right, left. He'll, pin students against each other and have them talk it out. It's a very, very interesting class. Austin Serrett does, but no, yeah, I'd agree. That is something that Amherst does need to do better, and I think the administration has a good step or has a significant opportunity to help.
We're going to pause for just a minute.
We're going to pause for just a minute.
Little commercial break.
Yep, little commercial break.
All right, we're back.
All right, we're back. So the next question I'd like to ask you is, what would you say to students who are on the fence about coming to Amherst?
It might depend on which what's the other thing that they are considering. As we like to say, friends don't let friends go to Williams. But in all seriousness, the thing that I would say is the world is changing in terms of the kind of work that graduates from Amherst and places like Amherst are going to do.
Yeah.
And I don't know everything that's going to change
Yeah.
in the workplace. I don't think anybody does. I think if anybody pretends that they know,
They have no clue.
right,
They have no clue.
they're selling you a basket of goods. But we do know that it's going to change and likely to change more rapidly.
Yeah.
The people who are not going to just survive that set of changes, but actually have the capacity to lead through them, will be people who have learned how to learn.
Yeah.
They will be able to ask the right questions. They will be able to take in new and ambiguous information quickly, and they will learn how to persuade other people about the direction that we need to go as they understand that information. It's not going to be about technical skill, although there will be technical skills that are necessary. The leaders are going to be the most adaptable thinkers. A place like Amherst, that is our DNA, is to teach you how to think, how to be nimble, how to respond. You just talked about your classroom experience with Professor Serrett, right, where the whole point is not necessarily to walk away with a set of content, but a way of inquiry and understanding of the world that will make you a stronger thinker no matter what you're interested in. And that is something that a small campus where you can work closely with faculty is especially good at. A campus where it is entirely focused on undergraduates, where the attention of the faculty is not divided between graduates and undergraduates and professional students. Yeah. And a place where you are brought together to learn from one another in close ways. So, what I would say is, I think this is an extraordinary place where you can have the opportunity to transform yourself and prepare yourself for what comes afterwards. I like to say my role as president is actually not to make sure that students have a great 4 years on campus. It's easier for me if you do. But actually my role on campus is to make sure that you're prepared for the 4 years after you graduate, and the 4 years after that, and the 4 years after that, and so on and so on. And that's an exciting mission to be part of. And I think Amherst does a superb job of doing that. I think you can see that in the alumni that we graduate. You can see it in the work that students do here on campus. And, I think this is a special place. And I would say that anybody's on this fence should actually come and spend time here and get to know more people before they choose to make the wrong decision.
Yeah. And do you want to elaborate a little bit more about the Be a Mammoth Day? Because
so Be a Mammoth Day is one of our days for admitted students, where you get to come, you get to meet students, you get to hear from different people on campus. It's one way to get to know the campus. You can visit at other periods. It's not a hard campus to visit in terms of, you don't need a big formal program, although that's helpful. It's not a hard place to get to know people.
Yeah.
And, it is the kind of campus where you can just stop somebody in the dining hall. I do it all the time, as you know.
Yeah.
And,
shout
ask
out
them,
Renee. Shout out Renee.
Shout out Renee in the dining hall.
Bell Dining Hall worker. Amazing.
And, ask them a little bit about who they are and how they got there. And, one of the things I would say about Amherst that's true is no Amherst story is the same.
Yeah.
It is also a place, and we haven't talked about the open curriculum, where students have a great deal of responsibility for their own education. They do get to choose courses to a greater degree than most other institutions.
Mm-hmm.
And that does mean that everybody goes through Amherst slightly differently.
Yep.
And I think part of that, and I would say that was one of the attractions for me to Amherst, part of that requirement to take some ownership over your education, I think, is also something that gives Amherst College graduates a different kind of confidence in the world after they leave.
Yeah, and just to expand on that a little bit, so when and once again, like coming from Jacksonville, we just, liberal arts colleges, it's always just kind of a thing.
Right.
My dad said, like, liberal arts college, like, what is that? What is that? And, just having liberal in it, I guess maybe turns a lot of people off. But a liberal arts education is one that, the open curriculum especially, at Amherst, you are not obligated. There's one class you're obligated to take, which is a freshman year seminar, which you have like 38 options to choose from. Every single freshman takes a first year seminar with like a prominent professor on campus. Mine was Professor Lawrence Douglas, who's great. I really like Lawrence Douglas. And I've worked with him. I did like a special topics course, which I guess is something also to talk about, is at Amherst you can create special topics courses, which is you can work with a professor on like research that they would like, or a project that would be important. For example, so during the election season, a couple of students and myself, we all wrote in the Amherst Student, which is the Amherst newspaper, on the election. We all kind of had different perspectives. Mine was more right-leaning. Other students were independent. Some students were left-leaning. And we all kind of covered the elections from different standpoints. But the special topics course allows you to work directly with professors, and I don't know of anywhere else you can do that. I think it's such a cool thing.
It is great.
It
It comes back to that sense that the faculty are really here to help you get where you need to go in your educational journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also, just with the liberal arts education, just expanding a little bit more in the open curriculum, is so after you take that first year seminar, the only other requirement is that you graduate with a major.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
So, like, for example, I love politics, political science. That will be my major. But after, I'm really excited, like, to take a geology class or take a logic class. I think that would be so cool. Why not?
Why not?
And I remember graduating in high school was actually funny. I remember I was sitting with my academic advisor deciding where to go to college, and I was so pissed because I was like I went to Bowles High School in Jacksonville, Florida, the Bowles School, and I was like, I'm so mad because there were so many cool classes here, but the entire time I spent my years like trying to get into a good college. And I feel like that's what so many students do. So many students go through high school not enjoying it. There are cool classes you can take, but how the entrance process is set up is it's a very rigorous thing.
Right.
Your entire life as up to 18 years is on a piece of paper and a supplemental essay, and it really and I know Amherst is different. Actually, I would like to ask you about that. Is how is like the Amherst admissions process, do you think, different from other colleges?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know enough to actually say to
Yeah.
give a really substantive answer. I know about how we do things here. We really take a very holistic approach.
Yeah.
We obviously do look at grades and academics, but we look at other kinds of experience that you bring. We try to get a sense of the whole person. It's the advantage of being a smaller institution. We really ask, the question is this person prepared and eager and interested in taking advantage of the kind of education that we have to offer here? But I'm not an admissions expert.
Yeah. Okay.
I've actually never been in a admissions reading room,
Okay.
and I'm happy to leave that to people who know how to do that work. And I certainly don't know enough to really say how that differs from what goes on in other institutions. So I'm going to defer that one.
Fair enough. And circling back, this was in the back of my head, and I know you're very positive about your experience at Emory, but what would you say, like, why would you, what do you think Amherst, how do you think Amherst distinguishes itself from other high rigorous institutes like Emory?
Right. So there are a couple of different axes. One is it is different to be in a college that is focused entirely on undergraduates. That's a big deal. And, I think sometimes students go to larger universities like in Emory because they think they're going to get certain kinds of research experiences, especially that they might not get at a small college. And, I'm here to tell you that's actually not true. And in fact, you're more likely to work directly with a professor, they call a PI, principal investigator, at a small college than you are at a big university, because at those big universities, they're also, they're working with postdocs, they're working with graduate students, and the lab is a much bigger operation. So I think that's a big difference. The size of the campus itself is a difference, and there are good things and bad things about being on larger and smaller campus.
Yeah.
I personally prefer the intimacy of this. I like being on a campus for myself, especially as president, where I can walk around and get to know people. For me, that's a big deal, and that's not as possible in a larger institutions. I would say, the thing that I think really that I love about Amherst and I've always loved, and I think is different than some of the other institutions, is that we're a place that prizes curiosity. We are a place that looks at you when you come in the door and says, you are a curious person.
Yep.
We're going to give you the opportunity to exercise that curiosity, see where it takes you, and we're going to support you and challenge you along the way.
Yeah.
And we're not going to presume that we know what that looks like for you, but you have to have that essential quality to you. And so when I talk to the admissions team, I said that's what we're after. We're after the curious people, and I think the people who are going to have a huge advantage in this economic shift that we're starting to go through are the people who are driven by curiosity, the people who can not just answer questions but ask the great ones. And that is the hallmark of a liberal arts education.
Yeah.
Right? How many seminars do you end? You don't end with an answer. You end with a question.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, and I'd like to ask you to kind of expand on it. I have a friend who talks about AI all the time.
Yeah.
It's his passion. He's all into crypto and all of that. I don't understand it. I'm just a humanities major. But how do you think students, let's say, the student doesn't end up here or chooses, God forbid, Williams over Amherst College. What would you say about students? Like, how is AI going to change the workforce?
Yeah, again, as I sort of said before, I'm not sure I understand everything.
Yeah.
It will be a tool.
Mm-hmm.
The way I've come to think about AI over the last year is that artificial intelligence can either be a tool to shortcut the learning process,
Yeah.
or a tool to enhance the learning process.
Yeah.
And the second path is harder.
Yeah.
It takes some understanding of what artificial intelligence can do and not do. It takes some subject matter expertise. it takes some real engagement. But the people who learn to do that second thing,
Yeah.
they're going to be the people who are ultimately successful.
Yeah.
And so that's at the macro level one of the ways that I'm thinking about it. And it will change how we teach here. It's already starting to change how we teach here. And you're going to see that evolve, I think, in real time. And faculty are trying different things in different classes. We don't have a single way of approaching this. But I think it's going to be very organic. I think it's going to be as much bottom up as it is top down. And I do worry that there are probably certain jobs that will be automated.
Yeah.
And that's a real anxiety that I think a number of people have.
Yeah.
And I think there will be people who figure out how to use it in ways that enhance the world. And again, those are the people who we want to be educating here.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think Amherst College could really, there are a lot of ways I think Amherst College could lead the pack in academia, but an emphasis on curiosity,
right,
creativity, the humanities.
Exactly. Those are going to be those are going to be real values. We are not the place that's likely to be on the. We have a great computer science department, but we're not the place that, as an institution as a whole, is likely to be on the technical edge of of creating large language models or anything like that. But we are a place that is likely to ask great questions and help people think about the ethics of using AI, about how creativity can employ new technology, about the ways that it's going to structure, communications and the pursuit of knowledge in a broad sense. And I think one of the advantages that we have is, because the kind of place we are, you're going to be experiencing over the course of your 4 years here a lot of different faculty experimenting with different ways of using and thinking about it. And the classroom itself is a kind of laboratory. Yeah. And some of those experiments will be brilliant, and some of them will not be. That's also the nature, right? Yeah. Of pushing things forward. And there'll be an advantage to being a very nimble institution and a place where faculty have the autonomy to try new things, and not necessarily always being told exactly the way to do about it. Yeah. Or about it.
Interesting. Let's go to our next question. Okay, this is a little bit personal, but what do you want your legacy to be at Amherst, or what do you want to be remembered for?
Yeah, the legacy question I don't really think too much about. Part of it is that your legacy is sometimes, it's always defined by people outside of you, but also sometimes defined by external events. So I was dean at Emory during the pandemic, and I think that sort of defined my legacy.
Must have been a nightmare,
right? Leading the institution through the pandemic. But that's not what I came in to do, but it was what was. What I really hope people associate with me is really just what I want them to think about Amherst. First of all, I'd like this to be a place of curiosity. I'd like it to be a place of joy in learning. And I hope that I can model those values and help people understand what that can look like in real time. And I hope that when people see me interacting in different ways across campus, they see glimmers of that. And so that's what I hold myself to.
Yeah. And one thing I know you're kind of known for is, one day I'm walking through Val, which is once again the dining hall, and I'll just sit down, and then I'm like, is that Michael Elliott just sitting talking to a student? Like, you do that all the time. Yeah. You just sit down, or you don't even schedule it. You just walk around Val and just sit down and talk to people, which I think is very cool. I think it's very unique and different.
It's fun for me. Yeah. And the food is good, and it's also a great way of learning about the campus. So I ask a lot of questions, and I learn a lot about what's going on in student life from those kinds of conversations.
Yeah. Is there? You said the food's good. I'm gonna
Yeah,
ask you a
yeah.
question. What is your favorite Val dining hall meal?
That's a great question, and I would say it varies. They do a nice Cuban sandwich.
Okay, that's not what I would.
But
think
I really like the bulgogi bowls they do with the rice
Okay.
and the beef. Like that's pretty good.
Yeah, that is okay. That is a very popular one, and a lot of people say I think when they have like the burger night with the French fries,
Yeah.
I think that might be one of the best ones. Or the ribs and mashed potatoes and carrots, I think that's a very good one. Yeah, I don't know how we got on the topic of Val dining hall
It's your
meals.
microphone.
But yeah. Well, that's all I had for you. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about or say to the students?
I'd just like to say, I think, I know it's a stressful time when you're deciding where
Yeah.
to go to college. And I'm sure you have, if you're listening to this, if you've made it this far, you probably have great choices in front of you. And, ultimately, you have to think about what's important for you. And some of it's about what you actually do on campus.
Yes.
You can come to Amherst and you can go through your 4 years and you can take no risks.
Yep.
And you can not really get too much out of your comfort zone. And you can probably find classes in your major that, you're pretty good at. And you'll graduate with a degree.
Yeah.
And or you can come to Amherst or wherever you go, and you can push yourself. You can try some new things. You can try to meet people you wouldn't otherwise meet. You can challenge yourself. You can let yourself get into some uncomfortable and difficult positions. You can stretch. You can fail sometimes. I think that's part of a successful college experience, and you'll be a different person when you leave. And really, no institution can decide that for you. You have to decide that for yourself. I think at Amherst, we give you that opportunity, and ultimately, it will be up to you.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. It's so true, but you get out what you put in.
Yeah.
And if you come to Amherst, I mean, for the love of God, like it's so weird. I'm sitting with the president of the college, which I feel like a lot of places that wouldn't be possible. But Amherst, it is very small. You will get to know your professors on a level. Professor Catherine Sanderson, like world-renowned psychologist. She is great. She brings her dog in to office hours. It is cool. It's a very different, special college. And you have the ability to, come here and create change. You can create a club. You can, I can talk to you about what I think the, Amherst could be doing better, which I've done, and you've been receptive. I do think the size of Amherst, because it is, people love to complain. It's human nature. People love to complain about, the dining food could be better, this could be better, this could be better. But a thing about Amherst, which I love, is a lot of students, there does seem to be a good bit of initiative at Amherst.
Yeah.
And, whether it's, politics, and it might not be something I agree with, but students feel very passionately about things here, and they take an initiative. They create clubs. They, have protests. They have rallies, stuff like that, which I think is cool. That's what college is supposed to be. No. College is not supposed to be a place where you go on to a Zoom call with a professor, you don't know their name, and you graduate with a piece of paper, and that's all you got out of it. That's very sad if that is what defined your 4 years at your institution. But I really think Amherst, it's very hard to go through Amherst and do that. I feel like it's very hard. One of the things, too, about Amherst is all of the students here are very high-achieving, intelligent people. So once you're, and that is one of the things about, like in an elite, like very rigorous college that's good is when you're around students who are, go, it makes you go. Like,
you get used to being not the smartest person in the room anymore.
I'm never the smartest person in the room. I can promise that. I think I'm a very passionate person, but that's okay. Like, that's good. Yeah. Not every... there's one person on earth who's the smartest in the world. I mean, you're not supposed to be. That's acceptable, you know? Come to Amherst, make mistakes. I mean, I can't emphasize that enough. I really would love for the Amherst student body to get more involved, like create change, do something. Do not just come here and go through the motions. I really, that's something I'm very glad you touched on, and I think it's a great point to end.
Thank you, Jeb.
President Elliott,
thank
you
you
very much for meeting with us, and this was our first episode of Inside the Herd.